All Things Leadership. I'm Beth Bergen. I'm an internationally awarded leadership and communication coach, and I am here each Tuesday to talk about leadership, communication, and mental fitness. Now, if you watched last week, what you'll remember is that we identified that there's a really high demand. In fact, I think it was 73% of employers are actually looking for creative thinking skills. And we also talked about why creative thinking skills could absolutely serve you in your career. So, why are creative thinking skills so valuable from an employer's perspective? Well, I guess it's a range of things. So, let's talk about some of those. The first thing is that you're able to problem solve, and that means that there's innovation and there's the potential for innovation and potentially fresh ideas coming through the system. If there are um, opportunities for critical thinking, a creative thinker is much more likely to be able to go get multiple perspectives. They're better able to collaborate, to communicate with others in the team. And generally, a critical thinker will be much more resourceful. Sometimes it's not about throwing dollars or money at the problem. Sometimes it's about figuring your way through and being resourceful and being able to utilize what you've actually already got. And also, why is it valued? Because a creative thinker is going to have a commitment to professional and personal development. And all of these things, if you've got that creative thinker in your team, all of these things are going to lead to increased productivity, a much better customer experience, a better culture in the workplace. People are enjoying their work. There's more likely to be innovation. And all of this leads to dollars. What are the traits? What are the traits? Someone asked me during the week, what are the traits of a creative thinker, Beth? And it's really actually quite hard to pin these down. But I guess if you're a creative thinker, you're more likely to be open minded. You're more likely to demonstrate a willingness to take a risk. Not an uninformed risk, but actually taking a risk. More likely to be curious, wanting to know about things, have an excitement about learning new things, and also that ability to be flexible and adaptable. Don't have to stick so much quite to this is the way things are done around here. The other question that I got asked a couple of times during the week is, can you learn to be creative? Can you learn to be creative? And so today, what I want to do, because you can learn to be creative, you have to be deliberate about it though. It's not, oh, I'll just have a wee burst of being creative and then I'll go back to being plain old, this is how you do things around here. So you have to be really deliberate about it. So let's have a look. Today, what I want to do is to share with you 10 tools that you can use, or 10 techniques that you can use to get the brainstorming happening, to get the creativity happening. The reason I said brainstorming is because that's number one. Brainstorming. Now, brainstorming is an awesome process, and you can either do this individually or in a small group. And it needs to have a little bit of structure around it in terms of, it's open thinking. There are no limits, there's no judgment, because often when we give ourselves permission to just do a brain dump, we actually put all sorts of criteria around it. So, true brainstorming allows a free flow of thinking. So the ideas pop out, they're written down without anybody saying or questioning, how would we ever do that? Why, or saying, that's a silly idea, we're never going to be able to do that. So brainstorming will come up with all sorts of weird and wonderful ideas. So that's the first tool. The second tool that I have for you today is mind mapping. Now, it's really actually quite difficult to explain mind mapping in a small conversation like this. But, Google it and you'll see some information about the processes. And what I love about mind mapping is that you link all of the information and the ideas around the central topic. And you don't have to use words or sentences, you can use images or colors as well as the words. And what I find with mind mapping is that it really allows you to go deeper. And because you're going deeper, you're able to narrow down the options and the possibilities. And the other thing that I really enjoy about mind mapping is that, as well as solving the problem, and solving the problem probably faster than if you didn't do a mind map, it also has this ability to combine ideas around how you might solve the problem with the process and how you're going to achieve it. So, mind mapping is something, if you haven't used it or you're unfamiliar with it, or if it's a little while since you've used it, I really recommend that you go check it out and find the process. The third thing is reframing. Now, reframing is all about changing your perspective and looking at things from a different angle. So, to reframe it, you've got to be really curious. You have to be able um, to make time to start to imagine different ways of looking at the issue. You have to be quite intentional about doing this. And you have to be able to step back a little bit. Sometimes when we're problem solving, we're so close to the problem that it doesn't actually enable us to see what the possibilities might be. So it's really about stepping back and being really curious about different ways of doing things. Now, I've spoken before about reframing our thinking, and this is very similar. It's on a larger scale, but you're simply changing your perspective. A very simple way of looking at that would be that often when we look at an issue, we look at what can and will go wrong, and that's our approach. And to reframe it would be to look at what could and may go right. So, it changes your perspective from the doom, despair, disaster over here to actually looking at what could go right. Okay, the fourth thing is role playing. Now, if you're part of a team, this can be an awesome way, particularly if you're looking at or you're wanting to look at creative ways to talk about a product or service that you sell. If you want to look at creative ways to innovate for new products, then getting the team to role play with someone being the customer and someone selling or talking to them about the product and service, it can be a great way to generate ideas based on possible outcomes. So your customer is going to just be free thinking. Your customer's going to be, they may be a really difficult customer, they may be a curious customer, but it's about having those conversations and playing those roles. The other thing that comes into this is that if you play the role of the person, or if you've got someone in your team who's dealing with the issue all the time, very often a role play will just help to trigger something for them that helps them to come up with the solution because they're working with the problem all the time. Yeah. The fifth one, very similar to reframing, but it's a reconceptualizing. So this is all about taking a deliberate step back and reviewing the whole thing, looking at, what's a different aspect here? What is appealing to my emotions here? What's triggering my negative emotions? What might trigger my sense of security or my sense of safety? What might trigger my positivity? What is it that the target audience is needing? So putting yourself in others' shoes so that you get that change in your mindset. The other thing that you can do to reconceptualize is go find someone who knows nothing about the issue and explain it to them. And that's a whole new voice. And that whole new voice can really help you to see, well, okay, this is very different. They've got a different aspect. It's also helpful when you explain it to somebody else who has nothing to do with the issue to actually have to chunk it down. And often the solution or the creativity can come out of that. The sixth one is daydreaming. So often we don't allow ourselves to daydream. Just give your mind permission to wander, allow that to happen. Think about what might be possible. Think about weird and wonderful ways that you might be able to solve the issue. Beautiful. Freestyle thinking, doing that daydreaming, build your creativity. As long as you're deliberate about it, you'll hear me keep on saying that. The seventh one is curiosity. Curiosity. I just need to have a drink. Curiosity is all about asking lots and lots of questions. However, it comes down to what kind of questions matter and needs to be questions that explore the possibilities. So often those questions will start with how, what might we experience this? How might we fulfill this? How might we achieve this? But also, a great question is for what purpose? For what purpose are we doing this? For what reason are we doing this? It's a bit like asking why. Now, there's a process, and I won't go into it here because we won't have time. So I'll look to add it to an upcoming session. But there's a really useful process for examining what might have gone on and better understanding the events that have occurred and potential solutions for them, called 5 Whys. But we won't talk about it now. We'll talk about it another time. But this curiosity is all about asking questions from as many different perspectives as you possibly can. And what you know, or what you may not know, but as a coach, what I know is that if you ask the same question again, or you ask the question and say, and what else? And what else? That really helps you to get closer to what the issue might be. The eighth one is your frame of mind or your mood. Now, there's a lot of literature that tells us that your creativity is bound to be running more freely when you're in a positive frame of mind. Mental fitness is all about the more your mind is working for you and seeing the positives and the possibilities and the opportunities, the more creative that you're likely to be. So that's a train of thought that I absolutely subscribe to. But there, you'll also find some writings about how a negative frame of mind can actually push your motivation. It can actually create a greater desire and a greater need to solve the issue and to be creative to solve the issue. Now, I will always subscribe to the fact that positive frame of mind is better, not just for creativity, but for everything. However, it's up to you to determine for yourself. Notice what you're noticing about yourself, your frame of mind and your moods, and determine when you are most creative. And that'll mean that you then begin to use that frame of mind or that mood to build those creative thinking skills. Number 9, talked about this briefly last week. Step back. Step back. Give yourself some space from the issue. Create other distractions. Give yourself permission to go away, have nothing to do with it, do something completely different, and come back. with renewed energy and a great commitment to do that deep and valuable work, to be thinking creatively. Noise can be a real distraction. So if it is for you, you're in a shared office, think about being able to wear headphones, find a quiet space to work in, and make sure, really importantly, that what you're doing is planning that creative time for you to be thinking. Put it in your diary. Make sure that you're scheduling it so that you do have that thinking time. Not 5 minutes, a little longer than that, so that you can really get into that creativity. Okay, the 10th one, this is our final one. Just start. Just start. Join in on some creative activities. It can be hilarious to go to one of those paint and sip nights where you're actually painting. If you like baking, do baking, gardening, whatever it might be. Do something that brings out your creativity. Look to understand you and the various moods and things that you're in. Look to understand that perhaps what we do is we put boundaries on ourselves and our thinking. We can box ourselves up as, oh, I'm not very creative. Shift those boundaries and look to really understand yourself. One of the beautiful things about mental fitness is that talks all the time. Get out there, be noticing the colors around you. Slow down enough to notice the colors, notice the shapes, notice the smells, the sounds, the textures. If you can do that for 10 to 15 minutes a day, but just be really focused on those things when you're out on your morning walk, when you're driving to work, whatever it is that you're doing, slow down enough to notice all of those things. The other thing is, in terms of starting, look at the issue, look at whatever it is, and start getting involved in thinking about the possibilities. What are the possibilities here? What might I be able to do? What could I do? Now, sometimes when we say might, we're limiting ourselves. Sometimes when we say could, we're limiting ourselves. Like what's possible here? What are possible responses? So it's that freestyling, that free thinking that I've talked about in some of the other tools. The key thing to this final tip of just start is that you have to be really deliberate about it. You have to give yourself the time and the permission to actually be doing it. Okay, so what we've looked at today is what's the value of creative thinking in the workplace to the employer. And that builds on what we looked at last week, where how is it valuable for you in your career? We looked at the benefits of employing creative thinkers. And then I've given you 10 tools to start you on your creative thinking skill set building. Thank you so much for being here. If you've watched the replay, love it if you put #replay. If you've got any questions or comments, please pop them in the chat underneath the replay of this. Thank you so much. It's been awesome to be able to spend time with you here today. You're on your creative thinking journey. I'll see you next